Well, welcome to the podcast. Yes, here's your host, Rob Elliott. And today I have the most beautiful, lovely lady, would you believe, from Ireland, Dr. Ann Donnelly. She is a doctor, a general practice doctor of 29 years. She's into palliative care. She's affectionately known around the traps as the Love Doctor, which we will get into later. She helps run a worldwide organisation where she practices positive communication and helps people out everywhere. And she's got a new book out. We're going to find out about that as well. And we have some surprises later in the chat. So please welcome Dr. Ann. How are you?
Rob, it is such a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you very much for having me. I'm doing really well. We have a little cloud here in Ireland. I'm not sure is the sun shining there with you? I'm sure it is.
We are in the middle of winter over here, which is nothing like your winters. But,
no, it's not.
It's we have a little bit of cloud and we get about a top of about 15 to 16 degrees.
I know that's low for you, but that's pretty good for us, actually. So
yes.
Enjoy.
Well, we still get to zero. We still wake up to zeros in the morning, but not for long. We'll be in spring very shortly.
Oh, how lovely.
Yeah. So you're living now in Ireland. You're in Derry. Have you always lived there?
Actually, I've always been based in Ireland, but I did spend a year living in Australia at one point as well. I lived in Perth.
Yeah.
That was in 2002 to 2003. I had an absolute ball there.
Yes.
I lived in Perth and in Port Hedland. I had the outback experience.
Awesome.
I met tons of gorgeous people. I really, really loved Australia, and I felt very much at home there. And for several years afterwards, I would have went back for a month and just visited all my friends, visited the great wildness that you have there, and come back again. Oh, I love Australia. Love Australia.
So you started off. What drew you to being a general practice doctor?
Oh, that's a really good question, because when I was growing up, I grew up on a farm. I didn't have any connection to the medical world at all. When I went to school, I really enjoyed science. And I had this amazing physics teacher, and I adored the way that she taught me physics. She was really cool. I went to a convent, and she was the cool teacher who went out, and came in a tracksuit, and she was, she just inspired me so much. And the one sentence that she said during, all my studies of physics was that she said, energy is neither created nor destroyed. And we know that and that, to me, I had been very close to all my farm animal friends when I was growing up, that I noticed the cycle of life and death very, very closely. But I always felt this connection, whether, the little animals were there physically in my life or not. I always felt the essence of them in my heart. I always had this incredible connection to the positive outcomes that each little friend had for me. So when she told me that, I held on to that for dear life, because I really wanted to discover what she meant by energy, what she meant by this thing that was neither created nor destroyed, that had this eternal aspect to it.
Awesome.
So so everything that I studied from then on, I actually fell into medicine by mistake, because I'd had my appendix out when I was 6 years old, and I thought, I'm never going to set foot in a hospital again if I could possibly manage it. Even at 6 years old, I said that. But in my latter years at school, I was a member of a choir. We ended up going into care of the elderly home and into the hospital. And as soon as I set foot in it, I thought, oh my gosh, I need to work here. And I had no clue what that meant. I didn't even know what a medical career was going to look like. I just applied and managed to get into medical school. And the first 3 years, I'll be honest, were quite hellish, because it was pure head in the books, rote learning, everything you could possibly imagine. And my eyes opened the first time that I met my first patient, and that was in third year, after 3 years of studies. And he was a patient who, now looking back, knowing what I know now, he was probably in the last weeks of his life.
Yeah.
And as soon as I met him, my heart blew open. I just knew, oh my God, this is why I am here.
Yeah.
And my studies in medicine, I had this desire to help as many people as I could.
Nothing wrong with that.
Many, I know, for as many different age groups as I possibly could. So I actually went into general practice. I decided I wanted to be in family medicine. But as soon as I got into it and I started meeting these beautiful individuals that come in, we only had 7.5 minutes per patient in those days. It was crushingly short, as you can imagine. So I wanted to help, but I realized my prescription pad wasn't quite, I didn't have all the answers.
True.
Because so many people would come to me and they would have issues of the heart that were beyond the plumbing. Issues that were emotional, that were psychological, that were, in a way, they needed that to understand themselves at a much deeper level. And I wanted to see, was there a path or a way that could really help me to help them? And so I started exploring. And in those days, I started to go to a yoga class just to keep myself fit. And, and I asked the teacher so many questions. She got fed up with me and she said, look, go become a yoga teacher. And I did, just to get the questions answered. And so I went down the yoga path for some time. And then I studied acupuncture with British Medical Acupuncture Society, teaching doctors acupuncture, which didn't really talk about the essence or the core of acupuncture, which is really interesting because we were taught about acupuncture from a very anatomical point of view. We were taught about the local release of endorphins, and we were talked about, how things could relate to each other, not about the energy behind.
But isn't that what acupuncture is all about?
But it's amazing how medically we can suck that out of it and say, oh no, that's not something we can prove. Therefore, let's describe this rationally. So we're talking, really right side of the brain here versus left side of the brain. And sometimes, and if we're all right side of the brain and we don't leave anything open to nurture, to that open-heartedness, to the caring side of things, and indeed to the energetic side of things, and the more artistic, holistic side, which is more left side, left brain, then we become dominant and very dry in our approach to health and healing. There doesn't come that essence with it, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. Because I studied homeopathy as well, and when I studied homeopathy, I realized that it's about bringing the body back to balance. There's a huge wisdom already within the body already. It's about bringing that the person who's willing to give that a try, bring them back to balance. And I used many techniques, neurolinguistic programming, emotional freedom therapy. I have so many beautiful stories of, I'll give you one example. As a GP, walking into someone's house one day, and I'd just come back from an acupuncture course. So I had my little needles in my bag, and I had my little disposable piece. And I thought, this lady, I walked in and she was rigid in the chair. She had a really painful torticollis, they call it, but it was a spasm of the muscles in her neck. And I explained to her, would you mind if I just tried one of these little needles? And, so she gave me permission. 2 needles later, she was sitting up straight, pain-free. And for me, that was such a big, because she said, oh my God, thank you, doctor. She said, because I thought I was having a stroke. And we have to understand that a great deal of what, patients experience in life, and indeed my clients, is a fear around what they have or what they could potentially have, because we have a lot of knowledge out there now with Google, and everybody's Googling away at their symptoms, at their signs, and they have themselves dead and buried before they even get the chance to, really understand the mechanisms of their body. And sometimes when we free that up, when we give ourselves that opportunity to know what is really going on, even just the very process of relaxation, that process of softening, can give us so much more peace inside the body and so much more peace in the mind, which is where a great deal of this, exists. So I have to say that down through the years, I've really enjoyed both my medical career and my holistic career. But it wasn't until 2006 when I stepped into a meditation class within the Modern Mystery School that something clicked. I felt as if I had been swimming in a paddling pool of knowledge, and suddenly this huge ocean opened up in front of me. And the ethos of the study with the school is that all knowledge exists inside each one of us.
True.
So everyone that comes to the school are encouraged to really know themselves. And there are 7 mystery schools on this planet. Only one is open to the planet, and over the gateway to every is open to the general public.
Yeah.
And over the gateway to every mystery school are the words, "Know thyself."
I'll pull you up there. We are going to ask about business because, as you know, a lot of my people who come on the podcast are business people. But yes. I'm going to step back when you say about that. A lot of people are either open or they're closed to what's going on around them. I mean, you talk about you've got to be open if you want to be yourself, you want to find yourself and all that. I find that some people, it's like spirits within a house. I know when there's someone in our house. My granddaughter knows when there's someone in my house. But other people walk in and they'll look at me strange. Mm-hmm. How do you know, as a person who is nearly an empath, can feel energy, can read energy, so you add the medical side as well as the holistic side. When you look at someone, how do you know if they can be opened and if you can get them to see what you can see?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question, Rob. My experience is that when I came back from Australia, I lived in Australia for a year, as I say, 2003, and I was very blessed in that the CEO of our hospital at that time asked me to be a consultant in holistic therapies in the hospital for 3 months. She had a little bit of spare cash and she wanted to help me with that. So I worked with the consultants in the hospital, to ask them what their opinions were. I audited their openness to holistic therapies. And I was really surprised. I got a really high number of responses. And maybe that was because a lot of the consultants knew me. I'd worked there before. And they knew the nature of what I was doing. And it was interesting. The vast majority were open to it. If there was the funding, they didn't want their little piece of the cake to be, sidelined. So when people are motivated, by money things, again, very right side of the brain versus the left side of the brain. So it's about opening up to those, about finding balance in our lives. And when you say, how do I know if someone's open or not? I simply ask the question, would they like to give something a go? Would they like to give something a try? And if they don't, I always feel that we ought to have choice.
Yeah.
And every person who comes to me has the right to that choice, being an autonomous person with their right to choose. And so I offer them the options and I respect their decision. And I think that I always tell them what I do. I tell them, my approach. And some people welcome that. A lot of people do. And some people don't want that. They want the more traditional. You're the doctor. You tell me what to do.
Yes.
And I always feel, well, that's a choice in itself.
Yeah.
You want me to tell you what to do, then I will do that. So I feel that I'm a bridge between both options.
Yeah.
So if someone and sometimes we need very much our medical world to deal with whatever it is that the person's got. But if someone also wants a degree of healing along the way to help them to cope with what their journey, then that's an option as well. So I feel that each of us has something huge to offer each other. And when people aren't open, that is their choice. I'm not here to bang my head against a brick wall to try and convince someone, but I am here to give that option should they change their mind.
I've been privileged to meet a lot of top executives around the country, as well as interview a lot of them from overseas.
Yes.
And while some of them can be so successful, they throw themselves into the business, and their families suffer, their relationships suffer, and they cut themselves off so much that they lose all what I call contact with the people who they work for.
Yes.
What is it in today's modern society that these people just feel that they owe everything to their business, and what is important, like with me, is family and relationships, which is much more important to me than business? Why is it, do you think, that they choose to cut that off and just focus on the boardroom and making the shareholders happy or making the next dollar?
Well, in a sense, it is a choice. I think we have to look at what drives us in life.
Yeah.
And, the thing that we get the most reward from. And it's a little bit like that dopamine hit that each one of us gets when we have a success. And it could be an addiction to games, because we get that, when we get a reward, we keep coming back for more. And within business, that's no different. But it's interesting you should say about relationships, because relationships are where all our triggers lie in life. Our nearest and dearest are the ones who know best how to push our buttons.
Don't they?
And, with that comes the opportunity for growth, and comes the opportunity for us to really, come to that calm place, even though we're really triggered at that moment in time. So I can understand that takes time. If you're being triggered, you have to ask yourself the question, goodness, where did that come from? And then if you are being triggered, well, what can I do about this? Is there something I can do about this? And it means taking time out to talk and to build. Relationships do need building, so it is time. And for executives, they measure their time in pound signs, but relationships are not necessarily measured in pound signs.
Yeah.
And so when something's not rewarded with the dollar or with the whatever way it is, however they measure their success, then that is why it gets pushed aside. To me, that's another, it means that their success is measured in terms of their business, but there are other successes that we can have in life too. And relationship success is one of the most rewarding successes that we can potentially have.
So was it one of your high-paid executives that called you the love doctor? And how did you get around to that? Because that was, I'm looking at it going, who am I interviewing today? I mean, really?
I will be honest with you, Rob, because this is quite, I think I'm blushing actually.
Yes, you are. I got you to blush. That's a first.
Oh my gosh. Well,
no, it's actually the camera is playing up, so no one can see that you're blushing. The autofocus is playing. I have to put the flare back down in a minute.
Getting hot here now at the thought. No. It's a gorgeous question, Rob. Down through the years, I have found within my general practice, within my private practice, within the different areas of my life, people come to me, they ask me questions about their relationships.
Yeah.
It's the number one questions that I get asked about. And I always felt, oh my gosh. And something major happened to me personally. I went through a breakup of my marriage,
Mm.
the most significant relationship of my life. And I was, in the beginning, like a rabbit in the headlights. I didn't know what was happening. And as I began to rebuild my life and rebuild my confidence, my dear friends grabbed me by the nape of the neck and they said, Ann Donnelly, it's time to date. And this was 5 years later. So it was quite a bit of time. And I thought, well, maybe I'm ready.
Yeah.
But when that happened, they put me down in front of a dating app, above all other things, and I set up a profile, and I thought, I don't want to say anything. I just put up a few photographs, and initially, I started to swipe left and right, and whatever that was, and I have some of the most hilarious, intimate, and most heartwarming experiences to share about that. Now, I actually started to because I would come in and I would talk with my friend, and they would be either on the floor laughing, or they would be, they would be saying to themselves, gosh, what did you do? And, so I decided to write some headings down and to write a book. And with that, I actually called it Once Upon a Tinder. And people were saying to me, it has changed the lives. And the first person who read it was the lady who was helping me to time myself in terms of the writing so that I could get it out for a certain date. And when she read it, Miraf, when she read it, she said, oh my God, Anne. She read 2 chapters. Yeah. She got herself on a dating app, and she had been a single mother with 2 young children, and thought her love life was over. And literally, she was in a relationship within such a short period of time. She took the advice to heart. She had men lining up for her. That was the difference, but because she was taking the advice in a way, but she was putting it into action. And this is the thing. We need to take action in our lives. Now, the book has gems in it because when we have a broken heart, we tend to project sometimes our hurts onto the people that we meet, our expectations onto the people we meet.
Oh, we take it to work.
We take it to work. Exactly. And whether you are within, this is amazing because whether you're within business or whether you're within relationships, the gold nuggets in this really help us to find ourselves again, to own the broken bits, and to actually use those broken bits so that you can achieve the outcome that you desire. Because we have to be honest with ourselves. If there are broken bits inside of ourselves, the honesty and the openness and the vulnerability that comes with that, and sometimes people don't like being vulnerable, but when we look at ourselves, when we really are prepared to know ourselves, then there's something we can do about it. And that includes, when we're prepared to own all those parts, we can become healthier, both in our mind and more productive, both in our body and more healthy for longer. Because we all want to live longer now. We want to be productive for longer. Yeah. And so there are keys in here that are so important to that. So important to that.
Do you think that they call some of the top business people in the world, the real good ones are the calmest? Do you think it's because they've actually discovered who they are?
Certainly in the business world.
Yeah.
Yes. And I would agree. There is something to do with that because they have overcome so much. Each hurdle that comes along, believe me, if you're successful, the people look at your success and they think, oh, I love that. But they do not know all of the failures that have come, before that, all the knocking on the doors, all the hurdles that had to be overcome, all the pitfalls that were fallen into and where they pulled themselves back out of. So it is, It's not a one night thing. There is this, sometimes people, because we have a very interesting social media world now, people feel that there's an instantaneous fame thing. And there is this sense of entitlement to success, which doesn't have the depth to it. And you will find that people who have gone through those different turmoils have a depth to them that is really quite, really quite something. They know themselves certainly from the business point of view. And if they want to know themselves from other aspects, then opening up and exploring that sometimes can be a little scary from the point of view of, how's that going to affect my business? Well, is that going to eat into that time? Now, I have, a love in my life that is very driven. Has, time is extremely, extremely important. And we work together to etch out time.
Yes.
But when that time is there, that is our time. And as long as you're prepared to create that, even if it's a small amount, there is a possibility for something special to develop.
I couldn't agree more. There's everything, you speak about when it comes to being in touch with yourself, the holistic side, the energy is so true. And when I do my sales and business coaching with people, I say, you have to allocate 10 minutes every day, no phone, no nothing, just for you. And one of the guys pushed back. He was having a problem at home and all. I said, look, find a place that's you. And I said, just do it for 2 weeks and come back. I saw him 2 weeks later. He wasn't saying for 10 minutes. He was going for half an hour every day. And he said it was the best thing. His productivity went up. He was smiling more. Everything changed. Because he allowed time for him. Ended up getting himself a lovely lady after that, and he's going gangbusters.
Yay! I love to hear success stories like that.
That's everything you speak about. Now, you were saying before about there's something, I actually thought it was from Hogwarts, but the Magical Mystery School, is that what is that? I've never heard of it.
Yes, it's called the Modern Mystery School. And it is something that we have on our planet today, that it's really a school of advanced spirituality. And it's for all denominations, all religious practices that want to come to it. What it does is it enhances our appreciation of that divine spark within each of us. And it's really interesting if we're prepared to bring that into business. Now, today's modern world, we talk a lot about targets. We talk a lot about, achieving certain things. But if you want to shake that up a little bit, and to introduce something slightly different where you are really, all business is really about relationships. We know that. And if we are prepared to treat ourselves as that divine spark, as that royalty, and then each person that we meet, when we build those relationships, we experience them in their divinity, in their divine spark, then we can get to a whole other level of creating something really quite divinely inspired, that takes our world, our relationships to a whole other level. Because the main aim of the Mystery School is to create world peace. That is, it's a state of being called Shambhala, where everyone, all of our 7 billion people on the planet have a say in what that looks like. And that is because each one of us has a divine nature, we will have a say in what that looks like. So if we are honoring that in ourselves and we are honoring it in each other, then we can do it. we can create world peace. We talked about this a little bit before we came on, because sometimes when people talk to me about something that seems aspirational, like something that's way out there, that's something that's beyond. Sometimes you need something a much bigger vision, and it's those visions where we need to bring that spiritual aspect in.
Yeah.
Now, the school honors every individual as having all the answers within, and it does heal. Each of us as guides and as healers and as teachers within the school, you can train to be that. Each one of us, and I know business people who have come, we have people from all walks of life, including high-end business world, who use the tools in their everyday life to literally create magic in their world and to bring their business to a whole other level.
Yeah.
Because if you have, for example, we have an amazing 2-day class called Empower Thyself. And those 2 days teach you tools which bring daily healing into your life. So if you are working on something that needs shifting, perhaps you find that there's a block in your life that has come up and you really, really want to shift that, this brings your life lessons to you, up to your face, and helps you to get around them and over them, and brings in unique solutions that you never, ever, ever would have thought of. This is where it's like when we want to achieve something, when we want to create something, there is a wonderful path called the Universal Hermetic Way Kabbalah, which is a 10-month study within the school. It's over 4 weekends with study groups in between times. And what it does is it helps you to master the creational world, how to create in this world, how to bring into fruition something in this world. And it brings something through what we call the 4 worlds: idea, thought, plan, and action. And those pieces become much more alive within us when we study the Universal Hermetic Way Kabbalah, because what we study is the divine within ourselves. And when we connect to that, we connect to life much more consciously. Because most of us are running around with this subconscious stuff that's going on in the background, all our hurts, all the stuff that happened in the past. And unfortunately, that often dictates what we produce. But the Universal Hermetic Way Kabbalah helps us to empty the subconscious mind so that you are engaging with life much more consciously, and therefore being more productive. You're much more positive. You find that the heaviness lifts. You're engaging life in a much more productive way.
Yeah. Oh, look, I couldn't agree more. I had you would call it a life-changing experience about 4 years ago that taught me to get rid of the stuff that was holding me back, to let it go, as they say. And it was all about projection into the universe. What you seek, you shall find. You've just got to tell the universe, and it will provide. And it just comes down to attitude in coaching language. If you can get someone to change and project who they are and what they are, I see it every day. I see customers who project that, my stuff's always late. I've always got the bad people turning up. And it's because that's what they're telling the universe they want. And the other guys...
And reliving it and reliving it.
And reliving it. And I just look at them and I see the people at work and I go, I just can't put up with that today. I just walk away. And then I go and do some of my charity work and I'm dealing with kids with cancer, little kids. And there's not a sad bone in their body. They project pure love. They project fun and laughter because that's what they choose.
And, oh my God. Yes.
It's absolutely beautiful when you see it.
It is. And it's that innocence, in that sense of childhood, where before we become boxed into, the family unit, the upbringing according to, first of all, your gender, and then according to your, what your family expect of you, what your peers expect of you, what your school expects of you. And it becomes much more, we need to break free from that. One of the treatments that I offer, and that I know life activation practitioners around the world offer, is the life activation. And it's really interesting because it activates this, what we call the spiritual DNA, which helps a person really become more conscious of that spiritual aspect of themselves, that joy which is innate in us, the joy that you talked about in the children, in their smiles, in their carefreeness. It really gives us an opportunity to work with ourselves and heal those parts of ourselves that have been boxed. It's about taking off the lid and being much more free in everything that we do. Everything that we do. And I agree, children are the greatest example for us, for sure.
They are. Before we wind up, I'm going to ask you a really important question, because we do have a lot of business people at all levels that listen to our podcast from all around the world. If someone came to you and they're stuck, they're in business, everything isn't working. The business is going well, but personally they can feel it's starting to get overwhelmed, and this happens especially to successful people. What would you say to people in today's society? We've got the stress of COVID, we've got the stress of can't travel, we have family, we have social media telling us what we can and can't do by experts that have never done anything in their life. How do you get somebody, if they come to you and say, help? What are the first couple of things you do with them?
3 keys. And the first key is a life activation. Would you believe I don't even need to know what it is that's ailing you, because the answers are within you.
True.
We can talk, and I can give you something I can give you a few techniques that will help you to sustain yourself at this moment in time. But if you want real change, if you want to really make a big impact in every area of your life, there are 3 keys. One is a life activation, which is an hour treatment. It rebalances the energy structure of your body, and it helps to fill that DNA with light so that you are going out like a lit up Christmas tree, energetically speaking. Okay.
Awesome.
Isn't it? So that's number 1. Number 2, a 2-day class called Empower Thyself. Now, Empower Thyself it's 2 days that literally takes your energy structure and stretches it with concepts. And these concepts are concepts around our purpose here as humans, and what it is that we are here to do on this planet. Because when we get that bigger vision, then it suddenly becomes clear to us where our piece fits into the bigger picture.
Yes.
Of this planetary piece. Because all of us have that ability to contribute. Now, once you have that stretching, at the very end of the 2 days, there's a thing called initiation. And initiation is to start a process. Literally, where you put one foot in front of another as that pillar of light in this world, having an effect. Now, people who come to Empower Thyself, I have a beautiful gentleman, I'll just give you one example, but he came to me and he said, honest to God, Anne, I have never done a 2-day course that could literally transform the way I think. Help me to be positive. Help me to see the positive in even the most challenging of situations. Now, you get tools during those 2 days to keep you redirecting yourself all the time. So when something comes up, you're able to work with it energetically speaking, because we need to know about energy. We need to know how the impact of everything that comes to us. And the key number 3 is called, believe it or not, and I'm going to get a little bit way out. If you think I was way out beforehand, this is even more way out. It's called the galactic activation. Now, those 2 days, they actually provide you with this book, okay? And it's called the Galactic Activation Body. Now, we are galactic beings as well. We're in this entire universe. And we are having an increasing impact, not just in our world, but galactically as well. And if we want to know how to run a business from a new perspective, and there's a piece on here in business, there's a piece on here on how to look after our body, there's a piece in here on how to look after our relationships. If you would like me to give you one sentence from the business piece, because I was just thinking about this earlier, and I was just thinking, oh my God, I mean, we talk about relationships in this new energy, new food for humans. It talks about religion and philosophy. It talks about spiritual business.
That's different.
Isn't that different? And I'm just going to read you just a little message here, because it says business is one of the world's most corrupted parts of our society today because, okay, and I'm just going to say this in one thing, because it includes politics. But if we are prepared to look at each other as individual, to base it on relationships, to base it on the way that we look after each other as human beings, then that is where the gold is. That is where we can be high flying. I remember Founder Goodney telling me at one stage that there was this really incredible high flying businessman, and one of his students couldn't get. This was in Japan, where people are removed, when they're the boss. And so he said to her, he says, I can't get through to him. There's something we need to change, and he just isn't listening to me. I don't know how to do it. And he says, the next time that you're there with him, he said, just go right up to him. I know this is going to sound a little mad, and give him a hug. And
that'd throw his energy way out.
She did. And what happened was that he folded into that hug because he needed that so badly. It was the left brain was getting completely strangled.
Yeah.
There wasn't that connection. And the whole business ethos changed around because he was able to soften a little bit in that one aspect that she was asking him to soften in. Now, I know that may not appeal to everyone. I'm not saying that that's for everyone, not everyone. And of course, we're living in the day of COVID. We have to be careful about hugs.
Yes, we should be, so to speak.
Exactly. But there are other ways. And a lot of it is around communication. And one of the things I do is that I do advanced communication skills for healthcare professionals, because we have to break bad news a lot. And it's how we do that. It's how we manage that, how we manage our energy when we do that. And how as you say, you remain calm in the middle of the storm.
Yeah, it's an art form, as we call it in sales.
Yeah.
Learning to be calm when you're being yelled at, learning to be calm when things are going to the shit, as we, and it does. And many of us, when we first start out in business, react to it in not a good way. It doesn't fix anything. Meeting bad energy with bad energy just makes worse.
I'll give you a gold nugget here. Every emotion that comes at you is a means of communicating. And if someone is coming at you from a very angry point of view, the first thing you do is you say, I can see, I can sense you are really, really angry. You state what you see, because that is what the person wants. They want you to acknowledge their emotion. They want you to acknowledge, I am really angry right here. And then you can start from there to find out, can they bear to talk to you about why it is that they are angry.
And it's not normally what they're talking to you about up front.
Exactly. So if they remain angry, even though they've told you a little bit, and you can say, thank you for sharing that with me. I can still see there's something that's bothering you. Can you bear to talk about a little more? And again, you listen again. So it's all about listening. So these are new approaches. I mean, yes, we can shut someone down, but if you shut someone down, it's quite possible that you will never get that open again. You'll never get that opportunity again. And expressed emotion is an opportunity.
Yes, so true. It's been an absolute hoot listening to you today. It's been brilliant. I love listening and talking to people who are not out of the box, who don't have the cliches, that do push people's buttons in a good way.
Yes.
If people that are listening to our podcast today wanted to get in touch with you, find out where to buy the book and hear a little bit more about the school and what you teach, where do they find you, Doctor?
Well, my website is Ann Donnelly, ANN Donnelly, DONNELLY.co.uk. And if you want the book, it's called Once Upon a Tinder, and it's available on Amazon. And it's by Dr. Ann Donnelly, so you'll be able to find me there. It's and my biography there, but you'll find out a lot more about the Mystery School, Modern Mystery School, INT.com.
That's absolutely awesome. And before we wrap up, is there one final message you'd like to say to everyone?
Oh my gosh. Well, I talk about relationships in this book, but the core of the book is about the relationship you have with yourself. And if you are struggling, if you are finding it hard right now, you have a listening ear in me. I love to know that, people can tell me their story, yes. And to move forward. And life is about moving forward. It's about that constant motion forward. And usually when people are very anxious or distressed or depressed, it's because they're stuck. It's a stuckness.
Yes.
And that can be freed up. And there are ways and means of doing that. And it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily go on medication, although medication is sometimes necessary. But if you are really looking for something that is more energy-based, that is something that is more focused on empowering you, then please make contact. And yes, this everything is about the relationship you have with yourself, even the relationship you have with others.
Well, as you said, that is absolutely gold. Thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure to listen to you all the way from Ireland. We will catch up again soon, no doubt. In the new year, we'll have once we get out of COVID, and we can have a good old chat then. So that's it for this podcast. And as we say to everyone at the end of our podcast, have a groovy day.
Oh, Rob, thank you so much for having me. Have a great day, everyone.